In a few short moments, I'll be joined by one of my frequent collaborators, Tiger, for an in-depth spoiler-filled, and yes, super freaking late discussion over director Matt Reeves' gritty noir take on The Batman. But before we begin, let's take a brief look back into the long road that ultimately led to the world's greatest detective, being played by a former Hogwarts student with sparkly skin who knows how to have a good time living the high life without having to take a whiff of those goddamn farts! So shortly after the release of Batman v Superman, Warner Brothers had already greenlit a solo spin-off centered on one of the most controversial takes on the Caped Crusader to date, played by Ben Affleck, who was set to direct, co-write, and headline. Had it come into fruition, it would have delved into the early years of Gotham's crime-fighting vigilante before he became a murderous psychopath with a weird hate fetish towards alien immigrants. But much to the dismay of Zack Snyder's extremely loyal fan base, things started falling apart as soon as the Joss Whedon-directed reshoots began for the Justice League movie, which resulted in a great deal of controversies, including Affleck stepping away from the project due to personal health issues. In search of a quick replacement, Warner Brothers called upon Matt Reeves due to his impressive work on both Cloverfield and the Planet of the Apes movies, and his undying love for the Batman source material, despite what this douche nozzle says. His terms of agreement were a total rewrite of the script, not having it take place within the continuity of the Snyderverse, recasting the titular role, and having 100% creative control. And after taking the biggest L in cinematic history and realizing how successful standalone entries like Joker can be, the studio granted Reeves his wish to make the Batman movie he wanted to make. Fast forward through several years of pandemic-related delays and inevitable fan backlash and immediate retractions over the casting of Robert Pattinson in the lead role, audiences everywhere finally got the chance to see the latest Batman movie that they either really loved or really hated. Mostly loved, but more on that later. The story begins 2 years into Batman's crime-fighting career, and not much has really changed since he first donned the cape and cowl to beat the living shit out of random juggalos. In the midst of skyrocketing crime rates and the police department losing their collective minds over this costume sleuth making them all look bad, a new threat emerges in the form of the Riddler, played by Paul Dano, who goes on a Seven-like killing spree while exposing just how deep Gotham's corruption goes, which sounds eerily similar to an idea that Tiger and I had years ago for what we thought would work as a Batman Riddler movie.
Where's my check, Warner Bros?
With the help of his world-weary butler, Alfred, played by Andy Serkis, his biggest fan, Detective Jim Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, and a mysterious femme fatale named Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, played by Zoe Kravitz, Batman scours the edges of Gotham's seedy underbelly, looking for clues, solving various riddles, and interrogating other big-name criminals like the Penguin, played by a very unrecognizable Colin Farrell, in the hopes of putting a stop to the Riddler's warped deeds.
I was really excited when I was reading on some IGN articles and other things like that, that Matt Reeves, when he got greenlit for the project, saying, I'm really inspired by Chinatown, which is one of my all-time favorite detective film noir movies, which this movie had so much of a Chinatown vibe to it in its tone and the music and the very third-person perspective. It's a favorite genre of mine, so when you put Batman, who's the world's greatest detective, and detective film noir together, to me it's a perfect Batman sandwich.
Not only that, but the inspirations from David Fincher's Seven can clearly be seen and felt throughout, almost to the point of it being a shot-for-shot remake.
I know, but it fits, it's like, I'm not even mad. I saw it as like someone taking their favorite toys and creating their own story inspired by those favorite movies that the toys are based off of. The writing was really good. That voiceover at the beginning, talking about being in the element. They think I'm in the shadows, but I am the shadows. And seeing these random criminals, being aware that when they see the signal out, he could be anywhere and they're staring into the darkness, and is he there? I was like, wow. It kind of really put you in the shoes of the criminals,
Yeah, this is like the first time in a while where they definitely incorporated the horror element, because going in, I heard so many reports saying this is not a superhero movie, this is a horror movie, and you definitely get that element of true fear. I'm kind of terrified of Batman almost.
Yeah, because Michael Giacchino's music absolutely created that anxiety. It's really masterful filmmaking, just that kind of just the opening scene. I was like, dang, if all I got out of this movie was that opening 15 minutes and him investigating the crime scene, and that was part one of a 3-part TV show or something like that, I would have been like, that's dope.
Yeah. I also love the way when Batman actually shows up in a suit, all you hear is just this.
Yeah.
When I first saw it in the IMAX, like, you could hear the subtle sounds in the background because everything's wet in Gotham. It's always raining. And every time he's making a step, you hear the squishiness of his boots, but in a subtle way, it almost sounds like spurs. Like he's like the sheriff in an outlaw state.
That's cool. Wow. Oh man, all the dimensions you don't get when you're not watching IMAX.
But as intimidating as both the impending arrival of the Dark Knight and Michael Giacchino's bombastic score may come across, the stuff that really propels this movie further into the horror genre is whenever the Zodiac-inspired Riddler comes up on screen.
What Paul Dano did with the Riddler was, you know, with his imagination come alongside of Matt Reeves' writing and direction, I think they created a really threatening character. The riddles are genuinely, like, interesting. It was like, oh, that's really characteristic. It's not like Jim Carrey's Riddler where they're just kind of ridiculous, you know? Which, that movie's fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I watched that recently.
The videos that he sends out being this like modern day Zodiac killer type character, it was like a horror movie.
This is by far the darkest, most disturbing Batman film we've seen outside of Nolan or Schumacher, and pushes the limit as far as a PG-13 movie can go. So I gotta give major props to Matt Reeves and his co-writer Peter Craig for creating the scariest iteration of one of the least intimidating foes in Batman's rogues gallery, and giving him a motivation that feels believable and deeply rooted in authenticity.
All the intricacies of his plan, though, that's where it's like, whoa, okay, this. They were really playing on some cool, like, really heavy Batman, like rooted in, yeah, a character like this could exist, but we're totally gonna play it out in a fun, like, exciting, kind of scary way.
I love this version of Gotham. The look and design of the city, it reminds me so much of the Arkham games, you know, with the Arkham Square, just cluttered with TV screens, almost like New York on steroids.
I thought his Batcave being in an old subway station under Gotham Tower was like, okay, I buy that. That's cool.
Also, the gothic interiors of Wayne Tower. I mean, come on. The production design of this movie was just next level and deserves to be up for some major awards consideration.
This is what's so fun about a character like Batman, though. There can be so many different iterations. You can do so much with the character. You can play with it and change things and do callbacks and references and sometimes change entire settings or motives or, you know, dynamics between characters and stuff. Having Bruce Wayne be kind of irritated with Alfred is different. You get to see that a lot. Yeah, those scenes between Bruce and Alfred, while few and far between, were quite crushing at times due to one trying to be the best surrogate father they can be, while the other acts like an emo prick for a good chunk of the movie. By the time these two finally reach an understanding, it's nothing but waterworks by that point, and Serkis and Pattinson each delivered some of their best works to date. I saw the movie 3 times. I saw it twice. I saw it once on my own, I saw it with my brothers and sisters, and then I saw it with my dad. And every single time, I get chills during one scene more than any other scene. The neck bomb scene. Ooh. That entire scene was so well done. It happens in every great detective film. The detective discovers a witness that knows more than the detective and absolutely knows more than the audience. And the detective is trying to get through to them, but they would rather die out of fear for giving up that information. What makes those scenes so powerful is because the detective gets scared. And then kaboomy, and Batman blows up. That I'm getting chills right now just thinking about how well crafted that scene was. Yeah, I'm surprised Batman kept most of his face after that. Yeah, right. I mean, he blew up point blank. Oh yeah, but going straight into that next scene at the police station where they're surrounded by cops who don't trust them. That is a fantastic scene. So cool, dude. Man, let's talk. How about the dialogue of the movie? The dialogue is so film noir. I love every scene with Batman and Gordon in it. It's year 2, so they know each other well. He's even going to, you know, police crime scenes. And they have some of the best back and forth exchanges, especially during the police department escape sequence. I love the dialogue he uses where he goes, "Who's the mustache with the broken nose?" I was like, dude, y'all are straight up ripping that out of like some detective novels. Like, that's the dialogue, and it was so great. Yeah, and him punching Gordon and zipping up into it was so cool. And having the scene culminate with Batman flying off the roof via squirrel suit and receiving a major dosage of karma on the way down
down was just fantastic.
Oh, let's talk about that car chase scene, though, dude.
Oh, dude, that car chase scene was amazing.
Seeing that freaking Batmobile light up from the darkness and the sound of that engine turning on.
Man, it felt so good in IMAX.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And having it all lead up to what's arguably the best shot in the entire movie, with Penguin's upside down POV seeing Batman walking towards him in slow motion, it's everything a Batman fan could ask for, all combined into one frame.
We haven't talked about Catwoman yet.
Yeah, I thought Zoe Kravitz knocked that role out of the park. I really enjoyed the power dynamics between her and Batman, which felt more natural and genuine and less forced and underwritten than it was in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I thought she was really well handled. She didn't feel, because honestly, Penguin does not interest me. But Colin Farrell's Penguin I thought was really cool. Oh my gosh, whoever did the makeup for Colin Farrell deserves an Oscar. My dad went to go see it and he's like, that was Colin Farrell? I was like, yeah, isn't that wild? He's like, he didn't look or sound anything like Colin Farrell. Like, he was totally immersed. And John Turturro as Falcone, dude.
Inspired choice. He is menacing throughout, but the scene where he's with Bruce Wayne after he found out about that dark secret about his parents is menacing, but he's almost like, you know, reassuring Batman almost.
Almost like acting like a father in a weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very fatherly.
Yeah.
And it felt wrong. I also really like the themes of this movie because, you know, at the beginning, everyone's calling him Vengeance. Everyone knows he's Vengeance. He refers to himself as Vengeance. And then throughout the course of the movie, you're seeing a battle of ideas and what makes one idea actually right and the other idea flawed. Because both of those ideas are being represented by characters that on the outside look pretty similar. So when Batman has that thrown in his face at the end by having this Riddler thug say, I'm Vengeance, and drive it home into Batman, it's like, oh, right, yeah, I gotta be more than Vengeance. That's what I love about Batman's character, too, is that he's very human. He is not a superhero. I like Superman. I think Superman's interesting to a point, but I don't think he's challenged in a way that I can be challenged. But Batman seems to be challenged in ways that I relate to. This is year 2. He doesn't have it all figured out. I really like that.
I think that's one of the aspects of why Batman has endured for so long. There's just so many ways you can interpret the story and still feel connected to the complex humanity of this character. And speaking of complexities, I really appreciated how movies like this and the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix don't present Bruce Wayne's parents as these squeaky clean individuals who tragically lost their lives, but instead as morally questionable folks who did shady behind the scenes stuff, which in turn made them feel more three-dimensional than they ever were before.
And it makes someone like Alfred three-dimensional too. When he's talking to him in the hospital and he's like, Bruce, you have no idea who your dad was. I know who your dad was. Like, your dad was a good man and he made a mistake. You know what I mean? And so it's like what I really like about not just detective films, but really great films are the ones that pull the main character, kind of pull him apart at his core. And I think even Matt Reeves talked about that in some of the interviews, talked about the story being a really personal Batman story where he's going to be tested in ways personally that we haven't seen him tested in any other Batman film.
Another thing I really liked about the film that I'm sure others do not was that despite running nearly 3 hours in length, it still took its time developing the story, establishing mood and atmosphere, and lingering on shots that most likely would have been cut out were it any other movie.
I will say, you know, after seeing it 3 times, I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of variety between scenes, you know, visually. So it can kind of at times feel maybe claustrophobic, like, oh man, can we get a little bit more sun? Like, you know, there's a couple times you guys go up on the rooftop and you're in the sunlight, and I like that. Like, you know, it's definitely dark subject matter. There's not a lot of humor in the movie, and there's not a ton of action in the movie either. But I think that's the part that, like, someone like me who loves detective films, there's like one fight scene in Chinatown. I do not sit down and watch that movie for the detective action and the shootouts. There's definitely some great action in the Batman, but it's really, I think, really spaced out really well. I still think it's one of my favorite Batman movies, probably my favorite.
Yeah, I might be on the same page too.
If The Dark Knight had more detective stuff in it, it'd be my favorite movie.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I love Dark Knight. I love it. I still love it to this day. I've seen that movie 6 times when it first came out. But over the years, there's that one element that they didn't quite master, and that was the detective aspect. Which is what Matt Reeves, the Batman, got 100% right.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
but if there was anything at all I had to nitpick, it'd probably be for the Joker's cameo at the end.
Man, the Joker just seems really unnecessary. This movie's so big already, and I was like,
Yeah.
not willing to spend another 5 minutes. Like, I do think that it's 20 minutes too long, but I also can honestly say I have no idea where you would cut those 20 minutes out.
Nitpicks aside, this movie still earns a spot in my top 5 of the year. Not only does it rank alongside The Dark Knight as far as best Batman flicks are concerned, but it's one of the few live-action adaptations I've seen that felt closer in line with the classic animated series, to the point of including a red sky over a dark city. It delivered on everything I could have hoped for in a detective Batman flick, and I seriously cannot wait to see what else lies in store with this version of Gotham.
I agree. I think I'd give it a 10 out of 10. It had so much going for the photography, the directing, the writing, the acting. It just hit all these notes that I really love, and especially because of its detective film noir aesthetic. This movie's given me everything I love about a detective film, and it's using a character that I really, really enjoy watching.
Now, before we head out, let's take another quick look at some shortcut reviews. Since we covered something as franchise-oriented as The Batman, we're going to go over some other notable franchise films that came out this year. Well, at least the ones that didn't come out during the summer or at South by Southwest. Those will hopefully be for another time. For now, let's start things off with another DC property, Black Adam, a 15 years in the making passion project for Dwayne Johnson that's mostly here to reset the course of the DC universe. And while it does provide decent action set pieces, enjoyable performances from both Johnson and Pierce Brosnan, and a very promising final moment that apparently is going nowhere now, the movie overall turned out to be kind of a mixed bag for me. For a movie that took this long to get made and still be infused with mediocre writing, pandering side characters, and lazy world building, that shouldn't be taken as a good sign.
It doesn't matter what you think!
Now that the hierarchy of power in the DC universe has changed again, here's hoping they'll make something that'll score much higher than a 4 out of 10 next time. Moving on to an even more lackluster superhero property from another studio that can't seem to figure out what to do with their supply of comic book characters, Morbius, the dreaded source of a million internet memes that actually convinced the coked up fiends working at Sony Pictures to release this stinker twice in cinemas to hilarious predictable results. The story is basic and derivative, the visual effects rival the most embarrassing aspects of MCU's Phase 4, and the very loose connections to other better superhero properties that this movie tries to make were the biggest sins it could possibly commit. Yeah, you know it's a piece of shit when it has someone like me defending the Venom movies over it. Thankfully, we have a palate cleanser in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, a fitting end to Marvel's highly divisive fourth phase, as well as their most emotionally draining they've put out to date. The audience expectations for this movie, especially on the heels of Chadwick Boseman's untimely passing, could not have been higher. But director Ryan Coogler and the rest of the cast and crew pulled a Herculean effort with the superhero sequel, making something that successfully entertains the masses and honors the life and legacy of a young talent gone too soon. As for the rest of the non-superhero related follow-ups featured in this segment, the third outings in both the Fantastic Beasts and Halloween reboot series each had the difficult obstacle of winning back fans after severely letting most of them down with their previous entries to very little success. Personally, I think there's more merit to be found in both films than most would give credit for. With The Secrets of Dumbledore, we get a much more compelling Grindelwald in Mads Mikkelsen than in Tim Burton's Marilyn Manson creation, and there's just a better sense of stakes being raised in this intricate plot involving wizard politics and stolen magical creatures. While it may be the last time we'll ever see from Newt Scamander and company, the small bits of closure we are given were enough to keep this here longtime Potterhead completely satisfied. Halloween Ends, on the other hand, I did not expect to enjoy as much as I did. The opening and closing moments are amazing, the score by John Carpenter is fantastic as always, and if you happen to be as big of a fan of the anthology-inspired Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, then you're going to dig the many influences seen throughout. Not a perfect movie by any stretch, but certainly the most ambitious I've seen from this series in a while. The last 3 films we're going to briefly look over tonight are ones that you absolutely should check out whenever you get the chance, including Netflix's Glass Onion, the highly anticipated follow-up to director Rian Johnson's critically acclaimed murder mystery comedy Knives Out, that's every bit as funny, twisted, and immensely satisfying as the original, if not better, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the unexpected second solo outing following the swashbuckling adventures of everyone's favorite fearless furry hero that, much to my surprise, turned out to be one of the best, funniest, most visually stunning entries to come out of the Shrek franchise in a long time. And finally, Avatar: The Way of Water, James Cameron's 13-year-long endeavor back to the world of Pandora and its giant blue feline inhabitants that proves once again why Cameron is the king of both movie sequels and 3D blockbusters, as well as the last filmmaker on the planet you should bet against. And that concludes our super late, spoiler-filled review of The Batman and the latest edition of Shortcut Reviews. Now we leave it up to you. What did you think of the movies we talked about tonight, and what were some of your favorite films of 2022? Let us know in the comment section down below, and feel free to like, share, subscribe if you want to see more movie reviews, hopefully much sooner in the near future. But until then, I'm the host.
And I'm Tiger.
And we will see you next time in another Midnight Movie Madness.